Coming up today, Koreans hit the road to return to Seoul as the Chuseok holiday starts to wind down. We'll take a look at the conditions on the nation's expressways. President Park Geun-hye runs into Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe at the UN. Both express hope for a trilateral summit with China next month. First, Pope Francis is on his way back to the Vatican after wrapping up a historic first trip to the United States. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Monday, the 28th of September. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this afternoon, President Park Geun-hye and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe bumped into each other on Sunday at the United Nations. Holding a brief conversation, the two leaders said they hope to meet again in Seoul for a trilateral summit with China. Hwang Sang-hee reports from New York.
During a brief encounter with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on Sunday, President Park Geun-hye expressed hopes to see him in Seoul. The remark came ahead of a special luncheon on climate change at the United Nations. According to the presidential office of Cheongwade, Abe said he looked forward to a planned trilateral summit with China, to which President Park said she hopes to be able to meet in the South Korean capital. South Korea, Japan, and China are expected to hold a summit next month for the first time in 3 years. There is also speculation President Park and Abe will hold a bilateral summit on the sidelines of the three-way talks. That would be their first summit since both of them took office, as relations between South Korea and Japan remain at a historic low. At Sunday's luncheon, President Park said she expects the 193 UN member states to produce a new legally binding deal aimed at cutting greenhouse gas emissions by the end of this year. She also revealed plans to strengthen countermeasures against climate change for both South and North Korea, adding that such cooperation will help build trust on the Korean peninsula. President Park will give her keynote speech at the UN General Assembly on Monday, where she's expected to largely focus on a reunified Korean peninsula and preventing further provocation by North Korea. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News, New York.
Now, on the sidelines of the UN event on Sunday, President Park Geun-hye held separate summit talks with her Pakistani, Danish and Nigerian counterparts. To Pakistani Prime Minister Mohammad Nawaz Sharif, President Park proposed holding high-level dialogue between their two countries later this year. She said their country's efforts to maintain peace in Afghanistan can be one of the key issues. With her Danish counterpart, Lars Rasmussen, President Park said she was delighted about their two countries' alliance for green growth and expressed hope the summit will fuel momentum in their ties. President Park told Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari that she hopes to strengthen political, security and economic ties with Nigeria. Back here in Korea, and traffic is gradually starting to build on the nation's expressways on this third day of the four-day Chuseok holiday as hundreds of thousands of Koreans made the journey back to Seoul. Let's take a look at the map for the estimated travel times if you were to leave now. From Busan in the south to Seoul, expect to be sat in the car for 6 hours, 20 minutes. From Daejeon, nearly 3 hours. Gwangju, 6 hours. And from Gangneung, on the east coast there, set aside around 4 hours. The Korea Expressway Corporation forecasts the traffic will reach its peak later in this afternoon before easing up past midnight. Now, another downside, apart from the traffic from the Chuseok holiday, is that many women in Korea suffer carpal tunnel syndrome, which comes from the repetitive motions involved in making large quantities of traditional ritual foods. Now, carpal tunnel syndrome is a painful nerve condition that affects the wrist. Numbers released by the Health Insurance Review and Assessment Service on Monday show the number of patients with carpal tunnel syndrome jumped to 168,000 in 2014. That's an almost 30% increase from 2010. 3 times as many women as men suffer from this painful ailment. Doctors say minor symptoms can be relieved by taking regular breaks, by changing positions, wearing a wrist splint or taking medication. However, if symptoms don't improve after 3 months of medication, doctors advise patients undergo surgery. Now, this year's Chuseok delivered us a moon that was something special. Otherwise called a supermoon, it was the largest moon Korea has seen during the mid-autumn or Chuseok holidays in 18 years. But did you know we can only always just see the same side of the moon? Here's our Han Da-eun with more.
The moon sits some 385,000 kilometers from Earth, and we can see it appear in different shapes with the naked eye. But because the moon's rotation period and orbital period are identical, Earth-bound observers can never see the dark side of the moon. The dark side can only be seen from space. It was first witnessed in 1959 by the Soviet Union's Luna 3 spacecraft. Unlike Earth, lunar days last for about 14 Earth days. Lunar nights last around the same. Temperatures can reach 130 degrees Celsius during daytime and drop to minus 180 degrees at night. It's not a favorable environment for life, but the moon contains ample future energy resources.
Helium-3 is a valuable raw material that can be utilized in the nuclear energy industry. Huge amounts of helium-3 that comes directly from the sun accumulates on the moon's surface.
Only 3 nations, the U.S., Russia, and China, have ever landed on the moon. Korea aims to send a probe by 2020. Han Da-eun, Arirang News.
Pope Francis wrapped up his historic 6-day visit to the United States with a message of hope for families and consolation for victims of child sexual abuse. He sent a bold message to bishops responsible for such crimes, saying the Church will not idly stand by. Son Jung-in has more.
Speaking to bishops in Philadelphia on the last day of his first U.S. visit, Pope Francis renewed his commitment to punish those clerics guilty of sexual abuse. It is an issue that has plagued the Church for over a decade.
God weeps for the sexual abuse of children. These cannot be maintained in secret, and I commit to a careful oversight to ensure that youth are protected and that all responsible will be held accountable.
His remarks came after meeting privately with a group of adults who were sexually abused as minors by clergy or teachers. In his address, the pontiff also spoke about the difficulties of supporting the family structure in a rapidly changing world. On Sunday, the Pope also met with around 100 inmates at a Philadelphia jail to speak with them about forgiveness and redemption and to share words of hope. The 78-year-old pontiff ended his trip with an open-air mass on Philadelphia's Benjamin Franklin Parkway, where hundreds of thousands of faithful had gathered for the biggest event of his visit. Before boarding his plane to Rome, he thanked all involved in the visit, saying he was leaving the country with a heart full of gratitude and hope. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
France has launched airstrikes against the Islamic State group in Syria for the first time. The French president's office says France is confirming its resolute commitment to fight against the terrorist threat represented by IS. It added that France will strike every time its national security is at stake. France had previously limited its campaign against the Islamist terrorist group to Iraq, but French planes started flying reconnaissance missions over Syria earlier this month. Officials say the French attack destroyed an Islamic State training camp in the east of Syria. North Korea has renewed its vow to launch what it claims is a satellite next month to coincide with a key political anniversary. The North's official radio Pyongyang said Sunday that space science research and satellite development is an autonomous right of a sovereign state. It criticized South Korea for habitually interfering in what it called a fair and legitimate action. Earlier on the same day, Pyongyang made similar comments through its propaganda site DPRK today, saying its satellite launch was aimed at scientific and technological development for both economic growth and improvement of the people's lives. The launch is widely viewed by experts as a cover for a test of the North's ballistic missile technology. Experts believe North Korea will conduct the launch sometime around October 10th to mark the 70th anniversary of its ruling Workers' Party. The South Korean military is mulling the development of a fiber-optic laser cannon that could be used to down unmanned aerial vehicles. The Defense Acquisition Program Administration says it has been evaluating the development since October last year. Military experts say the ground-based cannon would be more effective than the current response, which can include using artillery fire or even scrambling fighter jets. The administration says it will announce its development plans by December. Now, increased local and global economic uncertainty coupled with low interest rates is prompting more and more Koreans to put their money into low-return but low-risk savings accounts over other investment products. According to the Bank of Korea on Monday, the biggest increase in household assets is cash deposits, representing some 56% of the total net inflow. Now, this is much higher than the 46% recorded for the whole of last year. Also, the amount invested in long-term products is more than double that invested in short-term products. Such choices are being made because non-banking financial institutions are providing deposit and savings products with slightly higher interest rates than major banks. Now, with the rising interest in healthy eating, more consumers are buying their farm products fresh through local farmers' markets. In fact, more households here in Korea are opting to spend at these outlets rather than going to the major retailers, and it has become quite a win-win deal for producers and consumers. Our Park Geun-hye has the story.
At this local food market, farmers sell their fresh produce. There has been a sharp rise in sales recently, with more people looking to buy fresher and cheaper farm products.
Selling goods directly provides us with a stable income, and I can take pride in providing consumers with food that is safe.
I come to farmers' markets more often than supermarkets because I can trust the producers and the products are cheaper.
According to research by Korea's Rural Development Administration, the ratio of consumers shopping at farmers' markets has been on the rise. Figures showed in 2011, out of 1,000 households, 13.9% bought their food at large supermarkets, but last year that dropped by over a percentage point to 12.8%. Meanwhile, those buying food at farmers' markets jumped from 9.3% to 16.3% in the same period, up 7 percentage points. With more people choosing to shop at farmers' markets, producers are able to cut back on room for retail markups, contributing to a 35% rise in income. In return, consumers are able to buy fresh farm products for about 12% cheaper than prices at large retailers. The Rural Development Administration expects the number of direct distribution outlets to continue to grow on the back of falling distribution costs in the future. Park Geun-hye, Arirang News.
Now, global milk prices have hit their lowest mark in 6 years, and the slowing global economy is posing even greater threats to Korea's milk exports. So, dairy businesses here in the country are stepping up their game to find new ways to win back the hearts of consumers. Oh Soo-young tells us more.
우유를 대신할 수 있는 건 우유밖에 없습니다. 우유를 멈추지 마세요.
Milk used to be the healthy drink of choice for adults and kids alike for over a century. But now, that milk that so many consumed with great diligence is in trouble. Global demand for the drink has been free-falling over the past decade. And latest numbers show that Koreans are drinking less milk, with the country's consumption dropping to the lowest level in 13 years, despite the average hitting 38 kilograms per person a year in the past. This has led to the largest oversupply of milk in 12 years. Experts say some of the biggest reasons could be low fertility rates, an increase in other drink options, and high production costs of sterilised milk. But the milk industry is hoping to turn over a new leaf, coming up with new ideas to win back the hearts of former milk lovers. Aside from the good old chocolate and strawberry-flavoured milk, businesses are putting out milk that comes in flavours like honeydew, watermelon, cheese and much more. Various milk-based or milk-derived products such as yoghurt, cheese and dairy snacks also offer a light of hope for dairy producers, as they have seen a surge in sales in recent years. On top of that, Korea has resumed sterilised milk exports to China after hitting a snag on import regulations that halted shipments for 14 months. The Korean dairy industry is pinning high hopes on this resumption of outbound shipments to the neighbouring country, with expectations that it will help relieve the nation's record-high oversupply in milk. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. Thank you as always for watching, and we'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Goodbye.